Hello, my friend, and welcome. This is your moment. I'm Katarina Miletic, and you are listening to the podcast that will challenge you to think with your soul and believe that your only power is inside you. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me here. I have lately taken upon making great connections and friendships and developing these intimate conversations in my podcast. And This Is Your Moment is a platform that is all about connections and relationships. So it would make perfect sense to welcome a friend, especially from an entrepreneurial world where we know it can be a lonely journey sometimes. So to find a soul that we resonate with and that we make friendships always makes me want to share that with others. So welcome, Katie Alves, and I'll give you an opportunity to say how you're feeling about today's talk.
Thank you so much, Katarina. And it's an honor to be here because, like you said, especially with the past year that we've been having, connection is everything. And it's so nice that you give people these moments to kind of highlight what they've been up to. And I'm honored to be your next guest.
Lovely. I wanted to touch upon things that we always talk during these conversations, and that is what we are passionate about, the work that we bring into the world, but going beyond that, what inspires us in our daily lives, what it is that connects. Because as we know, or maybe some of you who are just dreaming about being an entrepreneur one day don't know yet, that is that you can absolutely connect that passion with the work you do. And when you align your purpose with what you do in your daily life, your life gets another dimension. So why don't we start talking about how this journey of discovering your passion came about for you? You can be as as broad as you wish and start at the very beginning, if that's appropriate.
If I could really trace it back to the beginning, I could be here all day. But I love that introduction to this topic because as you're speaking, it already resonates with me as if I said the words myself. My passion really has always been rooted in connection of different cultures. And not just cultures as we would imagine it, of people in different locations. You're in the UK, I'm in the US. That's already a connection of something, bridging a gap between different places. But also there are different cultures within how we were raised and how we go about our day, our routines, our rituals. And so it's wonderful when you find that overlap and are able to really look at a person, have a conversation with a person, and find that thing that lights them up. I love nothing more than to have conversations with people when they're talking about not just small talk or little tasks of what they're doing in their day-to-day life, but when you discover the passion, and they might not even know it's there, but you can see it in their face, they light up, they could talk for hours on the topic. And I find that when I decided to become an entrepreneur, I've always had little instances, little hints of it in my past, but I kind of had a tendency to push it away because my culture dictated that the best way to be successful was to get a nice job, keep your head down, do good work, and someday retire and enjoy life. And that wasn't a terrible advice that I had been given. It's just what had been passed down in my family and in the culture around me. Yeah. And it wasn't until I decided to study abroad in my college years, it was a semester that I did in Madrid, Spain, that I was open to a whole new world of thinking, not even just of the culture, of the food, of the people and routines, but just a new way of thinking and perceiving different ways of thinking and perceiving. So it was almost like an experiment on myself of, okay, I'm going to give this a year. I was thinking I was just going to be abroad a year. in the end, I was there for 7. And it's something that then has molded me to think not so much in my upbringing and how I thought my life was going to be, but really opened my mind to the possibilities that the possibilities are endless. And so through my studies began with studying Spanish as a second language. And many people, professors, advisors, they wanted to box me in and say, oh, if you're studying a language, you're going to be a professor, you're going to be a teacher. And so I just kept pushing that away. What do I do now? I teach, but it's in a completely different capacity because I resisted the things that seemed easy and kind of opened the way to the road less traveled and let's try this. And luckily, I've just had so much support and momentum from others that have inspired me to continue doing so, especially when I get comfortable where I am. And so I think that's something that is interesting, as I think everyone is looking for that passion, that purpose of life. But as we're thinking about things, it's like, well, wait a second, let me see how else I can do this or who else I can help and serve. And
sometimes life takes us on a different journey so that we can rediscover that purpose that we once knew, but perhaps we didn't have the whole entire capacity to go after that dream. And talk about taking the words from someone's mouth. I mean, my goodness, our journeys are even closer than I thought, even more relatable. When I first followed my instincts to come to England to improve my English, this was during the course of my studies. I was doing a university degree in theology. And in my second year, I took a break to come to England to study English here because I thought it's going to give me a greater leverage when I start looking for a job. If I had experience speaking English in an English-speaking country, and we're better than UK. 27 years later, I'm still, I am still here. But I wasn't shying away from following where I thought life wanted to lead me. And also you mentioned the word bridge. I strongly feel that this, we are absolutely like a bridge between, I wouldn't even say to different cultures. It's just because we're geographically born in a different place. We sort of brought with a different set of rituals and habits than people in other places have. But when you look at those human experiences, they are always one and the same. So I know we just scratched the surface there, dear Katie. We can go on and on about this.
Absolutely. And I think too, what you were saying is, you follow that intuition. And I probably didn't recognize that I was doing that until fairly recently. I would say within the past 5 years is when I really tapped into that skill of recognizing that these aren't happenings that are just happening to me. They're happening for me, presenting opportunities and leading me somewhere. And actually, what I was doing in my 6th year of living in Spain was I got a master's degree in intercultural communication. And what that did, it covered the topics of translation and interpretation, focused on the languages of Spanish and English. But at the same time, it was broadening it into the realms of legal, medical, administrative work. And what I do now is still another step past that. But I know that every single job that I ever had, every training, every course I took was leading me to build the skills to do what I'm doing now. And it will be the bridge, the stepping stone to what I'll continue to do and achieve in the future. I'm sure of it.
For sure. I'm glad you're finding it like that as well. It wasn't a random set of circumstances. Those experiences wanted us to learn something. So, even if we were really challenged in that role or in that place, if we felt like boxed or trapped, we persevered through that. And now looking back in retrospect, you can always appreciate the lesson that you learn once you were in that place.
And I think that helps too, because in the moments now, when they're tough, when you see the resistance, you can kind of rest assured it's a moment in time. I'm supposed to learn something or grow. Because if I told you how I learned Spanish, it was a struggle. It was not my best subject. It was not an easy task. I'm not that great at memorizing things, but it was through the experiences and through being completely welcomed into the Spanish culture when I was living there, that I was able to build those skills in a different way that might not have been the traditional by the book. This is how you would learn a language, or this is how you experience a culture.
But I know your great qualities when it comes to interpretation, to actually going deeper and beyond what people are express in words only in their own language, right? You were there as a medical interpreter. Why don't you share a little bit more with our audience about this? Because it is such an insight that you had that led you then to think, where can you take this next step in your journey?
Absolutely. And really it came from my own personal experiences living abroad and having that anxiety and fear of going to the doctor myself, being unaware if I would be able to understand everything that was spoken to me. And a couple of very comical, yet, I can laugh now, but it wasn't funny then, kind of misunderstandings that I was able to get through. But others aren't so lucky because it's not just, like I said, a personal experiment. It's their health and something to take very seriously. So once I graduated from the master's degree, I was able to go in any direction I wanted. I actually did work at a law firm for a time, and they put me behind a desk with a bunch of dictionaries to physically translate in writing different contracts. And that was an easy sign to say, this isn't for me. And then once I moved back here to the United States, I really dug into that medical interpreting training, because I found such a value in that service to people that probably many of the people that I served, they were communities of people that were doing their best to learn the language of English, but it's not for everyone. It's not easy for everyone. And so to get to the point that you understand every word of your medical care is very tricky, especially when you're speaking about families that then have children. And I worked with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia with an agency that serviced their interpreting department. And it was just so eye-opening to be able to, I'm going to use the word again, bridge that gap between the doctors, nurses, and staff that felt helpless when a person would come and not be able to speak the language, and have very different services available. So in an emergency situation, usually they're grabbing for a telephonic interpreter, or now they've upgraded it to a version of Zoom where you're actually seeing the person on a screen. But the part that I loved about my job was that it was in person. So you were able to stand by that family, stand by that patient, as well as let the doctors know that you're on their side too. You're impartial. Right. And so I consider myself an empath in that I've always been able to see both sides of the story. And this was the next level of being able to resolve situations that would be extra tense, or clarify things when, when you go to the doctors yourself. I mean, I go with a Post-it note with questions, because typically you don't think to go through every single, system of your body, ask questions and get answers. And to have that extra set of eyes and ears in the room when you need language support is tremendous.
Absolutely amazing journey. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just to listen to you tell that story. And really, thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing. But I want to bring in this conversation a subject. I love how the word bridge comes often, and I just had the flash of the what I should title this episode, because I was playing with few things, and I always wanted to be relevant both to the conversation that we are having and also to honor the person that I'm speaking to. So you might see that word there, Katie. And to use that story as a bridge then as to how you discovered what I can see there over your left shoulder. It's quite a story as well. Yes.
Yeah, and it also has to do with bridging gaps too, because whenever we're learning something new, we have to recognize that we are in one place just starting out, and we have a journey to walk on. And so, you'll come across your bridges and your obstacles and different things that could challenge you to decide to let something go or to trudge on even more. And it actually was when I was in the process of moving back to the United States that I had my own health concerns be really came to light. As it was, I was going from two different continents, and there are different regulations of different things that are allowed to be in your environment.
Right.
So naturally, there's a little bit of an adaptation that you have to have physically, emotionally, as you're going through a move and everything. And so in my beginning years interpreting here in the US, I was surrounded by doctors and professionals, and they were colleagues of mine. And I just had observed in a very impartial way, but I was observing a disconnect between modern medicine, which is excellent and wonderful, and typical things that we can do to change our lifestyle to support our wellness naturally. And so I was just dying for some kind of connection of the two, because I never want to discredit one or the other.
Of course.
They're wonderful when they work together.
Yes.
But here, especially in the US, it seems as if many modern medicine practices are meant to keep us in this cycle of needing modern medicine and needing the services and constantly going back for what I consider to be a quick fix many times.
Right.
And even when you're talking about people who are using physical therapies and different things like that, they're practices that you're supposed to learn and then implement into your life. And what I would tend to see is the same patient coming back 6 months later with the same issues because they hadn't learned how to incorporate certain things into their lifestyle. Right. So in the same time I was observing that, I was also trying to hold the mirror up to myself to say, okay, wait, in what ways can I do things better? And at the same time, I had kind of had a relapse of my asthma condition. I've had asthma since I was 6. And through that journey, I kind of just used the medicines that were available to help fix what was the unwanted symptom of having that difficulty breathing. And I didn't really understand it because I also was growing up with it. So I was just kind of learning what I was told, accepting it as true, and moving forward. When I lived in Spain, I started to question things a little bit more. I started to think outside the box. I started to change my routines and my rituals. I would bike to work. I would eat probably a little bit healthier. I was more active. So as it was, my lifestyle was changing by itself because I was adapting to the culture, as well as I was recognizing, oh, maybe I don't need this medicine because I'm feeling well. And upon returning to the US, I realized, well, wait a second. Okay, yes, my lifestyle did change a bit, quite a bit. But at the same time, I was exercising. I was still doing certain routines that were good and healthy. But it wasn't until a friend of mine brought up the topic of essential oils that are therapeutic grade to support my respiratory system. And I thought, okay, wait, support, like all the medicines that I was using, it was something to, once you got to the point that you didn't feel well, you would use it, or you had to use this every day to be preventative, but it still was something foreign to feeling like I was in control of letting my body heal itself naturally. And so it was through that journey myself that I was able to find the different things in my environment that I had been inviting in, not knowing that it was actually doing me harm, as well as give myself support preventatively every single day. And now 3 years later, I'm asthma inhaler free because of the different lifestyle changes that I've had.
It's
And so
just
that's
astonishing. I like we have to take a moment here
yes.
just to acknowledge how huge that is, what you just said. You have discovered a healing for something that was a condition that you had to grow up with, and that you were made into thinking or incorporated this into your own way of thinking, like this is going to probably be something I'm going to be facing all my life, just managing the symptoms better or worse year by year, where there is actually the road to healing naturally.
And that's what I have to say too. I have to kind of put a disclaimer. This isn't the case for everyone. This is my personal case. But really what it is going from the scratch the surface, just put the Band-Aid on, to really taking that journey, going through the tough analytics of what the root cause is, and working through that, because it's not just a physical thing. It was also an emotional journey. It was also looking at what was in my household that could have been hindering and causing me to fall below that wellness line. But what I love now is the fact that I'm able to do that and help people, not just with asthma, but just with different areas of their life that they want support.
Right.
And I help to provide that guidance to find those solutions.
Just to connect those dots that perhaps they don't see that they are actually possible to connect.
Yes.
And being a bridge for them. Amazing, dear Katie. Just absolutely. I'm in love with your story and with what you are doing. And we need more people to help others open up their mind to the possibility of finding a solution instead of believing there is no solution, right? And I am in no way going to ever compete with, as you said, the medical world, and that has a place. But your life and your well-being will always be within your control of influence, in your ability to heal, right? Allow yourself that desire and that belief that it is possible. The stories that I have heard and the people I know personally who have cured illnesses that have been diagnosed as chronic is just astonishing. So you owe it to yourself to try, right? Do not just accept somebody else's diagnosis. That would be the message, underlying message here. Like dig deeper, look for naturally available solutions.
And I think too, a big important part of that is we put so much focus on the physical wellness. And it's interesting because if you are a determined person and someone tells you that you can't do something,
right?
Well, if you're determined, you're going to find a way to make it happen or make it possible. It might not look like what everybody else is doing. It might be your own way of doing things. But in the same way that someone might say, oh, you can't go do XYZ.
Yes.
The same way that when you face a diagnosis or you face some sort of news that you are strong enough to ask questions and advocate for yourself, that's the place to start. That's the place to begin. And just as if you were looking for how to become a successful entrepreneur, then you start to follow people who are successful in that line of work. Well, in the same way, when I first started and it was working for me and I was seeing such improvement, well, my mouth couldn't be kept closed because I had to share it with people. And it actually took me 6 months before I believe it was my cousin's wife who said, Katie, stop talking about how wonderful it is. Tell me how to get it. Teach me more. I'm like, oh, that's right. I can actually help you through that process. And that's really when my business was born, because I saw the need for that support and recognizing that while, yes, you may see in your health food stores on Amazon and different things that say essential oils, it really comes down to the quality. And that's going to make the difference between if you feel that you have success and support with it, as compared to just a quick fix again of a cheaper version. It might not do that same service to you.
what you offer is so beautiful, and it extends far beyond what is just the surface level of beautiful essential oils, as beautiful as they are to live surrounded with. There is much more that you connect and you personalize each and every journey. I'm going to make sure to give your link in the description so that people can actually seek your community and become part of it, because I can only strongly advise people to look in your direction for inspiration when it comes to positivity in life, to looking always being orientated towards the solution rather than what have I come across, like I can't go through this possibly. So before we come like to wind down this conversation, because I have a feeling it can go on and on and on, that I could just talk to you forever. Tell me, how has positive attitude served you in life, and what are your thoughts around it, and what can you share with us?
That's an excellent question, because it's interesting. I've always been a person that has had a positive outlook on anything. And that truly has been a gift. I know that not everyone is born with that, but it's something that I believe also can be learned. And so it's interesting that as I talk about my business or my personal life, or, just different things of inspiration that I like to put out on social media or in any conversation that I join into, I like to remind people that it's not something that just happens. It's a practice. It's very easy, even for the most positive person, to fall into a state of just, how do I get up out of this? Things happen to us in our lives. Yes, we can grow through it and take a positive spin on it in the end, but the world is going through transition. The world is suffering. There are so many things that need improvement and support. But what we can do is we can only control our reaction to things and how we respond. And there's a big difference to me between reacting and responding. And there are moments in my life that I can look back and go, ooh, I could have done better there, because I definitely came from a place of reacting instead of reflecting on it and then responding in a way that would bring about more positivity. And so with every encounter with every person, I truly believe that in those small moments, that's what then builds on that ripple effect to be able to create that kind of positivity wave that can really take over a community. And when you were speaking about my community with the essential oils, it's incredible because it feels like a very individualized journey, but it really doesn't matter what your story is. I mean, of course it matters to you. I'm saying in terms of, we're all on a journey, and we can link arms, support each other, lift each other up, instead of competing and thinking that there's not enough for everyone. We can tap into that abundance by bringing that positivity wherever possible. Are we allowed to have bad days? Absolutely. Yes. And that's when we need to reflect and figure out what we need to fill our cup and keep moving forward. But it's a decision every day that you can make to say, you know what, today's going to be a good day. And I've challenged myself on that, because there are days where I think, oh, there is a list of things I need to do. And then I check, wait, need to do or stuff that I get to do? You just kind of flip your verbiage, change the narrative, and through practice in the little things, that's what's going to make the grander difference in your life.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is dependent on our perspective and whether we allow it to go deeper into that unwanted, or we master our power and steer in the direction of what we do want, instead of that what we are witnessing or that has currently going on, but that we don't want to necessarily stay and linger in our lives, right? So
because that actually goes sorry.
No, that's
That
fine.
goes so much on the just the feeling of vibration and frequency, because when you are feeling that low, well, you can only, it's like you have blinders on. You can't see the good because you're in that low frequency. And that's what's so interesting about the essential oils, is that it actually comes from a living plant that has a vibration, that has a frequency. So it actually helps you in an emotional way to raise your frequency, even when you're stuck in that low. And with that, in knowing that there's a flip, knowing that that possibility exists, that's where, you know, you throw in the word hope.
Yes.
And that's where it all lies. Because if you think that you've lost hope, have a conversation with someone, go for a walk, you know, dance to your favorite song. There's always a way to lift yourself out and look at who you're surrounded by that supports lifting you out of that place.
I think the answers are always there. It's just that whether we are asking the right questions.
Oof, that's good. Yep.
That is, sometimes we don't realize that's where our problem actually is, right? We keep ourselves stuck in that mode of thinking.
A lot of times it's because we're focused on the problem, and the solution never lies in the problem. And it's, you know, all of this sounds so philosophical, but when you actually put a name to it and practice getting out of it and helping others do the same. And I think that's actually a huge part of it too, because if we find some sort of secret, something that has helped us in a difficult time, then share it with someone. You know, there's always people around us that are looking for extra support. And in sharing our little tidbits of inspiration, because we all have it, whether it seems like I might have more, you might have less, don't compare. Use what you have, because what you have is a gift, and we all have gifts that we get to share with everybody, and that's just the beautiful thing of life.
That's a beautiful message, and I think we'll keep that as a wrap on this conversation, that we really need to stay open to the possibility of having this kind of conversation, of letting the friendships develop, of staying open and exploring all options in our lives. Don't allow that one option is your only choice, because it never is. If you slightly change your angle, you will see completely different way of thinking, and you will experience something that perhaps you haven't seen from where you were standing from that standpoint. So I hope that Katie and I have encouraged you to dig deeper, to go beyond the surface level on whatever you feel inspired to explore and to do, and keep looking for those answers, because they are out there. Katie, thank you so much for being such an inspired guest, and I know this is just one of many conversations that we will share together.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Katerina. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks.